On the mysterious death of Nolan Wells. For the first time since Wells' body was found, we're hearing from a friend of the 18-year-old who was with him on the day that he died. Trayston Shepard, who says that he was with Wells on the 4th of July, but declined to speak on camera because of the threats that he says he's been receiving.
We did no wrong here, and we don't understand how we're getting so much hate behind it. We all cared and loved Nolan, and nobody wanted to see Nolan die. Nobody wanted to see his life be taken so short.
There's a detail in this case that didn't exist the last time we told you this story. 3 young men who once described themselves as Nolan Wells' closest friends now have something between them and investigators that wasn't there before. Lawyers, all 3 of them. A sitting judge has now spoken publicly twice. The second time not to explain what happened on Horn Island, but to say her family is receiving death threats. Nolan's own mother is still holding onto a piece of digital evidence that, months later, nobody has been able to explain. 2 location apps on the same phone telling 2 different stories. And perhaps the biggest development of all, federal investigators are now involved. We'll explain exactly what we know about that later. We're going to walk through what's confirmed, what's alleged, and what still isn't known. No speculation, no assumptions, just what's actually been said, by name and by whom. Here's where this case stands now. Before we get into it, if this case matters to you, take a second to follow along so you don't miss what comes next. Now here's what's happened. If you watched our first video, you already know the basics. 18-year-old Nolan Xavier Wells disappeared during a 4th of July trip to Horn Island with friends. 2 days later, his body was recovered near where he was last seen. The investigation remained active, but many questions were left unanswered. Since then, this case has changed in ways few expected. The first major development didn't come from an autopsy or an arrest. It came from Nolan's own phone. When his mother, Christine Wonsley, finally got it back from a friend's house, she and her sister opened his Snapchat accounts, both of them within 24 hours before any content could automatically expire. What they found was nothing. No saved photos, no videos. For a young man his own family describes as someone who documented everything, an empty account felt deeply wrong to her. "We found that very concerning," she said, "because anyone around Nolan at social gatherings will tell you he's always taking pictures, taking videos." Snap, the company behind the app, responded to media inquiries with a general statement expressing condolences and stating they stand ready to work with law enforcement. That statement did not confirm anything had been deleted or by whom. A missing memory is not the same as a deleted one, and right now, only the first has been established. Then came something harder to explain. Wonsley says she compared Nolan's Snapchat location history to data from Life 360, a family tracking app. The 2 didn't match. Ben Crump, the family's attorney, put it bluntly, "What teenager wouldn't take their phone? It's not adding up at all." No investigator has publicly reconciled this discrepancy. It remains one of the most cited open questions in the case. Around the same time, a video began circulating online, filmed from another boat near the island's shore, showing a smaller group appearing to argue. Crump has said a voice on that recording can be heard saying, "Give me my freaking phone, what are you doing?" And his team believes that voice belongs to Nolan. The sheriff's office has not confirmed the video's authenticity or its connection to the case.
It's important that we don't put ourselves on a timetable and that we don't rush ourselves. But I do think it's important to be diligent in gathering all the facts. That's what the family deserves.
We'll come back to why that uncertainty matters, because one of Nolan's own friends has pushed back hard on this claim. Then came the legal escalation. On July 7th, Nolan's family retained civil rights attorney Ben Crump. 3 days later, they made a decision that changed the scale of this case entirely, flying Nolan's body to Washington, District of Columbia, for a second, independent autopsy conducted deliberately outside Mississippi. Crump said the goal was an examiner with no ties to local law enforcement, citing what he called a serious trust issue. Former National Football League quarterback Colin Kaepernick helped fund the exam through his Know Your Rights camp organization. Filmmaker Tyler Perry stepped in separately to cover funeral costs. Results were expected by July 10th, then delayed. Crump cited issues transporting Nolan's body by air. As of the most recent reporting, those results still haven't been made public. Neither has the original state autopsy. Toxicology remains pending, a process officials say can take weeks. On July 10th, this case reached a national stage. At a press conference in Harlem, Crump was joined by Reverend Al Sharpton and Nolan's parents. Sharpton's words were direct. "What we've been told does not make sense." He raised race explicitly, invoking Mississippi's history, while cautioning against assuming the answer in either direction. "Don't rush to judgment saying it was racism," he said, "but don't rush to judgment saying it was not racism either, because we do not know." That same day, Nolan's parents rejected outright the idea that their son chose to stay behind. "That's not his character," his father, Elmore Wansley, said. By this point, 4 different versions of the story had emerged. None tells the whole picture on its own. If you're finding this breakdown helpful, drop a like so more people can follow the facts of this case with us. Now, let's go through each of those 4 accounts. Let's start with the family's account. Nolan would never have willingly separated from his group. "If you go with a group, you stay with the group," his father has said. They point to the empty Snapchat, the conflicting location data, and the phone and keys he left behind as evidence something doesn't add up. This is their interpretation, not, on its own, proof of what happened. Then there's the account from one of the friends. Trayston Shepard has disputed the viral video directly, telling Rolling Stone, "In that video, you hear somebody yelling, 'That is me.'" He's also said the group had been drinking since late morning. Visibly frustrated by the backlash, he said, "We did no wrong here. We all cared and loved Nolan." This directly contradicts Crump's characterization of the same video.
Well, we were just having fun all day, and then as the day went on, people started to drink more and people started to get more drunk.
Next is the judge's account. Ashley Cole, whose son was one of the 3 friends, has given the most detailed public timeline. A bilge pump issue forced the boat back around 4:30, and Nolan chose to stay behind, planning to catch a ride later. She says her son cooperated fully with investigators. She's also had to defend herself personally, denying any attempt to interfere and revealing in a more recent statement that her family has received death threats. And finally, law enforcement's account. Sheriff John Ledbetter initially said there was no indication of foul play, language that drew heavy criticism online. A law enforcement analyst consulted by CNN suggested this likely meant no immediate, obvious signs of trauma, not that other possibilities had been ruled out. Ledbetter has since been more careful with his wording. No investigator has accused the judge, her son, or any of the friends of wrongdoing. 4 accounts. 4 vantage points, and none of them, on their own, tells us definitively what happened to Nolan Wells between 3 and 4:30 in the afternoon on July 4th. That's exactly why the newest development matters so much. As of this past week, all 3 friends have retained their own attorneys, and communication with the family's legal team has changed as a result. Speaking on PBS NewsHour, Crump said, "We don't know the level of cooperation the friends are engaging in because they all have retained attorneys." He also offered a pointed hypothetical, suggesting that if the racial dynamics of the case were reversed, the investigation would have moved more aggressively. That's Crump's stated opinion, not a fact confirmed by investigators, and Ledbetter has not responded to it publicly. Now the development we opened with. Sheriff Ledbetter confirmed his department is working alongside the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Beyond that confirmation, officials haven't detailed what the FBI's specific role looks like or what prompted federal involvement. What we do know is that Ledbetter credited a recent public appeal for information with generating what he called a lot of valuable information, tips he described as very productive. Federal involvement in a case like this isn't typical. It signals investigators see something here worth additional resources, though what that something is remains unstated. So here's where the investigation actually stands, stripped of speculation. No arrests, no charges. The cause and manner of Nolan Wells' death have not been publicly released, not from the state autopsy and not from the independent one. Toxicology results remain pending. The video allegedly capturing an argument has not been authenticated, and at least one witness directly disputes how attorneys have characterized it. The Snapchat versus Life 360 discrepancy remains unexplained by any official source, and by Crump's own account, the extent of the friends' current cooperation with law enforcement is unknown even to the family. What has changed is the scale of scrutiny. What began as a local search and recovery effort now involves a nationally recognized civil rights attorney, an independent autopsy funded by public figures, a judge forced to defend her family twice in public, and now federal law enforcement. None of it, individually or together, has produced a confirmed answer to the question this case has asked from the beginning. What actually happened to Nolan Wells after 3 o'clock that afternoon? That question is still open, and it's likely to remain open until toxicology results are released and investigators are able to say more than the investigation is active. What we can tell you with certainty is this: Nolan Xavier Wells was 18 years old, a son, a teammate, remembered by everyone who loved him as a presence that filled a room the moment he walked into it. His family isn't chasing headlines. They're chasing an answer to a question no parent should ever have to ask about their child. We've presented only what's been confirmed, attributed clearly to the people who said it. The rest remains unknown, and it deserves to stay that way until real evidence fills in the gaps. We want to hear from you respectfully. Of everything we've covered today, which unanswered question matters most to this investigation? And do you believe federal involvement will change how quickly answers come? Leave your thoughts below. If you want to stay with this case, as new verified information comes to light, subscribe. We'll be here the moment there's something real to report.